Welcome back to Unplug with Mel. In our last episode, we had the privilege of hearing from the incredible Robert Segura, the HR director of Midland County, whose insights into leadership and mentorship were truly inspiring. If you missed it, make sure to catch up. But the excitement doesn't end there. Get ready for our next amazing guest, Bruce Waller. He's the very definition of a motivator, an accomplished author, a captivating keynote speaker, and the check-in guy is what I like to refer him as because he knows how to connect and inspire. This promises to be another great podcast episode, so let's dive in and absorb the wisdom, motivation, and inspiration that Bruce brings to the table. And today we have a special guest, Bruce Waller. If you know him, you know that he's a podcaster too, and he's also an author with Changing Your Lanes in Life in the Leadership, right?
Yeah, I'm working on my third book now. So yeah. First book's Find Your Lane.
Find Your Lane. Oh,
yeah,
look, all those lanes are changing.
There's some lanes changing in that book. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a great topic of getting to know Bruce. I've been following you for about a year now.
Okay.
We've met here.
Is that good?
Yeah, yeah, it's been good. We've been, I follow your journey through Lincoln and of course in the conferences because you also go to nationals.
Yeah.
Yesterday I got to partake in Texas SHRM for the first time. And that was an incredible event. Lots of learning and knowledge, but it was good to see the special directives, the special people and what they do here in the Texas SHRM. Because we were joking yesterday that you need a chart from districts to who's there and who's down. Like,
there's a lot going on.
There's a lot, and then because you just think it, like for Permian Basin SHRM, we're just in our little bubble.
Yeah. And
then of course I knew about National SHRM through my employer, and then I got involved in the local chapter, and then they're like, "There's HR Southwest too," and I was like, what do we just go to all these conferences and what? And then it was all about networking and connection and community, because what I've learned in HR, if you do HR of one or HR of an department of several, you still have to do a lot on your own. You're not friends with your staff, you're not friends with your boss, and you can get kind of in the trenches of where do you go? Who do you reach out to? And so HR Southwest, Nationals, your local chapter has really been phenomenal. But when I got to figure out who you were and what you do, because I assumed you were HR too, but that's not what you do.
We're all HR, Mel. It's all about people, but you're right. I'm in sales and marketing for the Armstrong Company, and what we do is we help companies relocate talent, whether they're moving within their state or across the U.S. or around the world. And so that's what I do. I help, I coordinate services for HR professionals to relocate talent. And I think that's really where this came in, is whenever I started doing this for the Armstrong Company. I'm getting ready to start my 20th year with the Armstrong Company.
Wow.
But when I first started, I wanted to do more than. So everything we're going to talk about today is about more than, because we all want more than a job.
That's true.
We all want to feel like we're doing something big, impacting people. And so I started researching, and I found Dallas HR. And the reason why I started attending Dallas HR sessions or luncheons was because I wanted to learn more about HR professionals, what was on their minds. My mind was about relocation, but what was on their minds? And the more I learned, the more I wanted to be involved, and of course started volunteering for Dallas HR. 8 years later, I became the president of the chapter, which is the third largest chapter in the country.
Huge.
That was an honor. Now, I served on the board of trustees, and today I serve Texas SHRM as assistant state director. And, speaking of Texas SHRM, we had a great meeting. And a lot of people don't realize Texas SHRM is there to support and connect the 31 chapters across the state of Texas. But really, it's all about bringing everyone together to feel like there's more than. Right?
Yeah.
Make them, it helps people validate hey, I'm doing the right things here, or it helps people get ideas and see the possibilities. Hey, I need to try that. And so I'm excited to be here. We met, you were talking about offline, we met at this conference. We're at the HR Southwest conference. You attended my session, and then you talked about after the session how
engaging you were. Like, you wanted that feedback, and you came right up to me, no qualms. And I have social anxiety like none other. And when you came up to me, and I'm like, yes, I went to your session. And then, like, what do you say? Because he was a speaker, right? I'm like, you were really good. What did you learn? On the spot, And
let me check my notes, right? Yeah, it was great.
And you shook my hand, and you made me feel a part of it. Like, you recognized me in your session. And then when you're here in HR Southwest, it's a lot smaller than the SHRM Nationals. Yeah. And so you see each other quite a few times. Mm-hmm. And so I just kept seeing you around, always smiling, always engaging, always checking in with the other person. And I was like, he's the check-in guy.
The check-in guy. I haven't had that.
He's the check-in guy, And when I contacted you to come down to our PB SHRM conference, and we worked it all out to where you got to make it down, and it was such a huge hit. And then we still talking about other things. I said, you know what? I think I want Bruce on the podcast.
Thank you.
Because I've listened to yours, and I see what you do with who your guests are and everything like that. And I'm like, you know what? I want to put him on the hot seat.
On the other side of the mic.
On the other side of the mic.
I love that.
And I want to check in with you.
I love that.
And if yours is more than, then I'm sure that kind of goes in with your bio and your work, with your community and your projects. And so if you want to, take a few minutes on that, and we'll get right into our questions.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Oklahoma, and I got married right out of college and had children, and my parents are entrepreneurs. Okay. And so they own bowling centers. You ever bowl? Like throw the bowling ball?
There's a connection there. My dad was almost a pro bowler.
Okay. I bowled competitively for a long time. I bowled across the country, competed in the U.S. Open. It was a lot of fun. But what I realized though was I couldn't really take my kids around bowling centers all over the country, and I was really looking for alignment. I was working for my parents. I was a manager for the bowling center, and people don't bowl from 8 to 5. They bowl at night and on the weekends. My wife was a school teacher. Okay. And so she would work in the day and I'd work at night. We didn't hardly see each other. And so I decided to make a lane change, and my brother was in the moving business. And I called him and said, hey, I need to get more alignment in my career, in my life. And so I moved to Dallas, Texas, and that's kind of where it all began. And I've been here now for since 1995, so almost 30 years.
It's so cool to know another kind of bowler. It just brings back memories about my dad. But he didn't travel like you did, but I can see how that would be a challenge when you have young children and a wife. But I still remember the sound. Like when I go and take my kids bowling for just a quick second, the sounds, the noises, the smells. There's always a diner in the food. Oh, yeah. I'm like, dinner's in the bowling alley tonight.
Great cheeseburgers, great French fries.
You never know.
Great people.
Great people. Yeah. And my dad's teams, his team was called Double Trouble. Okay. And they were trouble.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
But I love how hobbies turn into passions, and then your change of lane is what brought you into HR Southwest, Dallas HR, and today. So the first question that we have on today is, can you take us through a key moment and experiences that shaped who you are today? Looking back, it's like self-reflection time.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you asking the questions. You sent me some of these questions ahead of time, and there was actually 3, I'll call them lane changes. My first book was called Find Your Lane, and what's funny about Find Your Lane is that was really a bowling term that kind of shifted whenever I wrote my first book, and it became a driving theme. Because there's different lanes of success. You got to find what works best for you. But as I thought about that question, I thought about there's 3 key moments. The first one was when I moved from Oklahoma to Dallas. I talked about alignment earlier. That's I needed that in my life. I've interviewed several guests on the podcast, and I asked them about that. Whenever you get out of alignment, often that calls for change. And so in this particular case, I wanted to be more in line with my wife's schedule. I wanted to be able to attend my kids' events and different things like that. And so that was important. It was a challenging time, but it was one of those times where I knew if I just went through, I talked a lot about peaks and valleys. If I would just go through the valley, the peak was just on the other side. Now, the second one was whenever I stayed with this company for about 6 years. I worked my way into senior management. But I felt like a lot of people feel like there's no more growth.
Oh, yeah.
In the company. So you have all these senior managers, they're going to be, they're partners, they're not going anywhere. And you're kind of at the point where there's no change unless you change. And so I made another lane change. I went to be an operations manager / general manager for a moving and storage company. And what I learned there is it was more than a job. It was about people. I really got to know the importance of having great people around you. I hired a young man to be my operations manager, and I learned more from him during that time than anything. And then my third one was whenever I joined the Armstrong Company 20 years ago, I had a boss that said, I want you to get out there and network. I want you to meet people, go find who the buyers are, go get out there and get involved. And the word involved was that lane change. I started getting involved. So I mentioned I joined Dallas HR. And by the way, I had to find my lane for Dallas HR. I was networking with a lot of different organizations, whether it's NetWeavers, Business Network, BNI, all these different groups, the chamber. But I realized I couldn't give all to everyone. I had to find the ones that really I felt a calling, and so I really dove deep in there. So Dallas HR was one of those North Texas relocation. And what that led me to was to be a president of the chapter, to be part of Texas SHRM, to be part of the North Texas Relocation Professionals, to write books, to host a podcast, to speak.
It just goes.
It just linked, but it's because I decided to get involved. And so I would say those are probably the three areas that's really shaped my career.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I take a key point away with that on alignment and then involvement. With my journey in that part, I have a boss too. Go network, make the connections you need, the resources you need, and transparency when you're coming into a different change of lane myself. It was key point that he was sending me in the right direction so I wouldn't be left alone. The theme, if you have good leadership, a good boss sending you into the right momentum for change.
It's like anything, you got to have great support, right?
Yeah.
And so my boss at the time never said, hey, where's your reports? Why aren't you here at 8 o'clock in the morning? Why? It was always, how can I help you? How can I serve you?
The checking in.
Yeah, and so today, that's how I'm trying to do the same thing with others, especially from a volunteer leadership standpoint. Because as a volunteer, serving as assistant state director for Texas SHRM, I know that volunteer leaders that I serve with, they have families, they have work, they have all this stuff going on, right? And so I tell them all the time, you do your best and forget the rest. And just keep serving, and you'll walk through the valleys and you'll get to the peaks.
I love that. In this, we talked about changes and that shaped you. Now we're going to go into setbacks.
Yeah.
And and the challenges that you faced along that way. How did you overcome them? I mean, moving from Oklahoma to Dallas, was there a setback in there? Was there a setback going into work with your brother? What was a setback that you really look back and go, was it really a setback or was it an alignment?
Yeah. When I think about that question, I think about the quote from Michael Jordan. He talks about his success is because of his failure. And I've lived a life of setbacks. And there's many times where it's felt like, you ever had that black cloud that just kind of hovers you? And you're just like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. And then you realize later that it wasn't. It was just the beginning of something. I think about that a lot. And there's been many setbacks. I remember moving from Oklahoma to Texas. I didn't immediately call my brother. I was trying to get another job to get in line. I couldn't get an interview.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, and what's funny is I shared my resume not too long ago. I still have it. And it's like bowling center operations. I mean, who's going to hire me? I mean, it was a very novice beginning resume. And so today, I talk about in my last book, Life and Leadership Lane, it's so easy to look back and see your career and your journey and all of these things than it is to look ahead at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And so I remember looking at that and thinking, why am I not getting an interview? So I did eventually call my brother, and he was able to get me one. That was a setback, but I just kept going forward because it's all about the why. We talk about that. We hear Simon Sinek talk about start with why, and that's probably been the one thing that's got me through pretty much everything. As you go back to why is this important, and I heard Jim Rohn say the bigger the why, the easier the how. And if the why's big enough, you're going to find the how. You're just going to. And so for me, it was about creating a better life for my family. Wow. And so that said, hey, just keep going. Don't take that as a setback. There's also been other times where I was thinking about when I've lost business.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So
you're in sales and marketing.
You're in sales and marketing, and all of a sudden someone doesn't want to do business with you anymore. Like, did I do something wrong?
Immediate. That's always the immediate response.
Yeah.
Did I do something wrong?
Yeah. Or I've applied to be a speaker, and you get that denial notice saying, hey, you know what? Thanks for sending in your application, but try again next time. Or relationships.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I've had setbacks there as well. And so, I think for me, I heard a guy a long time ago. I was trying to think who said it, but he was talking about how he was sharing a story, and there was he was a famous speaker, and he was sharing Brendan Burchard.
Okay.
So he was sharing how there was an Olympian who was getting ready to go speak, and she was telling him how nervous she was. And he said, well, have you done this before? And she said, well, no, I've never, spoke to, 10,000 people or whatever the number of people were there. And he said, well, why are you nervous then? You've never done it before. Like, you've never felt that. And he talked about how, where I'm going with the answer on this is he talked about the importance of serving people. Right? Adding value to people. And that's what I've tried to do is how can I serve others? Because I think that we get stuck when we start putting the spotlight on what are people going to think about us to how can I share something that will impact not everyone, but someone in that room. Yes. And I think that's the way, as we talk about this, that's really what I focus on. When I go into the room, I'm trying to be intentional on how can I share something? Maybe I'm speaking. How can I, and people ask me a lot of times, they'll say, well, are you nervous? I'm like, of course, we all get nervous, but I don't get so nervous that I can't speak because the focus isn't on me. It's on, man, there's somebody who's going to come into this room today. I'm going to share something and it's going to change their career. And the reason why I know that is because I sat in the room when many speakers have changed my career.
Yeah, Julie Birch is one that came out, and she's here for the HR Southwest.
Yeah.
And when you talked about the girl being nervous or whatever, so for several years, I have an anxiety issue or condition or whatever.
All right.
And so it limited me. I wanted to be invisible. I wanted to be behind the scenes. And she spoke and she said a clear line in there that if you don't do it, you'll regret it. But if you do it afraid, if you do it scared, if you do it nervous, it'll be worth it because you won't be in there. I regret not doing it at all. And I wrote that down and I went with it. And that was a year ago today. And like I said, if you had said I'd be doing a podcast where you see me on the camera, I would be like, no, thank you. No. But right, you hear somebody speak and the light bulb will go off. It'll connect with them. and then you get to see what their journey begins like.
Yeah.
And you've done an amazing job when you speak too.
Yeah.
And I love it when you go into change, and it gives people hope that no matter how old you are or where you are, you can change, you can pivot.
Yeah, I love that word, hope.
Hope.
I love that word. Funny story. When I first started speaking, I was I was nervous. The spotlight was on me.
Mm-hmm.
What are people going to think? And I went and spoke to a group here. It was actually in Fort Worth, right after I published my first book. And I was learning at that time how to be engaged, but it wasn't a real engaging meeting because I just wasn't skilled yet. And at the end of the meeting, I was thinking, oh, that was great. I signed a few books and shook some people's hands. And right before I left, there was a lady waiting for me at the corner. And she come up and she said, I wanted to wait until everybody, left the room, but I want to let you know that you gave me hope today. And I said, well, hope, tell me more. That's such a big word. And she was telling me about how her husband had, he was diagnosed with cancer. And she became a caretaker, and she put her dreams on the shelf. And eventually he passed, and she was no longer the caretaker, but she wasn't thinking about the dreams she put on the shelf. And she said after that meeting, she was going to go take her dreams off the shelf and start putting those into action.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that powerful?
That's powerful.
And that's why I say you're not going to help everyone, but you can help someone.
It's not quantity, it's quality.
Yeah.
Wherever we go,
Yeah.
and whatever we do, it's not quantity. You're not trying to reach the masses. You're trying to let that one person that came there for that event that day. You speak tomorrow, correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be that one person.
Yes, I hope so.
And you're gonna. Hopefully, you'll receive something again too. And I have a few other questions, but I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Yeah.
Because you're working on your third book.
I am.
Give us a synopsis of what that's going to be about, because you're an author of 2. What's the third one? Because usually when you write the first, you're getting your story out there.
Yes.
The second one, you're adding on to it. Are you switching things up on the third one? Or?
I'm not. My first book, Find Your Lane, was around, the subtitle was called Change Your GPS and Change Your Career, and the GPS was Grow, Plan, and Share. And I was trying to just show people the possibilities of, listen, it doesn't matter what you do, you just do something, right? And I talked about the things that I did, right? I networked, I showed up, I was trying to really be intentional. I called one of my chapters Driving with Purpose, and I was trying to be purposeful. And that's really when my career started changing, is when I became intentional about my everyday, from my exercising to my reading to different things that I do. Find Your Lane was a book I put out there. I was very vulnerable. I shared some failures. And after I published that book, I wondered if I should have published it.
Oh, yeah.
I had that doubt. We're probably going to talk about doubt.
Yep.
But about a week or 2 into it, people were coming to me telling me, hey, I see you. I've experienced that too. This is great. And so the book did very well.
That phrase, I see you.
Yeah. So I interviewed a CEO from Denny's, Kelly Valade, on my show, and she talked about that. And tomorrow in my session, I'm gonna be talking about that. I think that's important. But she talks about connection points. When I see you, I can connect with you. And so I didn't really think about writing a second book at the time. I did publish a journal called Mile Markers because I like to journal. I like to track my everyday and things that is going on. But then when I started my podcast, I thought, wouldn't that be cool? And maybe this is you, Unplug with Mel.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool to be able to give all of my guests a book after I interview them on the podcast? Oh, and by the way, it's my book. And so what I did was I took a lot of the things I learned from the podcast, I turned it into a book, and that was my second book. My third book, to answer your question, is this. I want to keep building on that, because here's the. Let me give you the subtitle, and the subtitle is Moving Your Career from Success to Significance.
Wow.
And where I want to go with that is, listen, we've all had success. You've had success. We all have success in some way. How can we take that and really create significance in our life, in our everyday? And I heard a long time ago, I heard success was really about helping yourself get to where you need to go, you're achieving milestones, but significance is when you're helping others.
And I think that's where I pivot to, in even launching Unplug with Mel. It's, if you know Unplug, it's a busy world. It's a busy world out there. Tons of distractions, tons of moments to get lost and off your lane. And so significance for me is I don't ever really care if this was a platform or a spotlight. It's making sure that if someone's listening today, on the whichever platform they hear it on, they have a moment to know that they're significant too, and they have a story to inspire infinite growth.
I'm glad you said that, because and when we think about significance, a lot of times we think about U.S. presidents, Abraham Lincoln, right? You think about astronauts, you think about teachers and doctors and lawyers, and really people that just lived in significance. They're doing things that matter. But when I think about the significance, I think about the everyday people. I think about my mother-in-law who helped her sister her last 10 years of her life, with her every day, cook for her and help her in every way. I think about my grandfather who served in World War II. That was killed during a time where they were loading ammunition into a ship, and it killed more than 300 men and women in the community. And today I get to serve an organization called Carry the Load, who honors the men and women that died in service. I think about the people that serve on different foundations and boards for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, trying to cure cancer. That's living in significance. And so I want people, I'm hoping the message is basically helping people once again see the possibilities of living in significance every day. Yes, we all want to have success. We want to be successful in some way. But more than that, we want significance.
I agree.
And so that's really
powerful.
what that.
Your book is going to be powerful.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm finished with the manuscript. It's in the editor's hands now. I'm hoping February of 2024.
Wow, I'm gonna mark that in my notes when we're done with
I'm still working on the title. I'm right now we're leaning on Drive with Purpose.
I like it.
So around the lanes.
Around the lanes, there's some purpose.
That's right.
We're going to go into recognizing that we all need support and guidance on our journey. Can you share a few mentors and colleagues who have played a significant role in providing wisdom and support in your life, and what makes them important to you? This is a chance for you to give people some accolades that have just impacted you in that wow factor.
I'm standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Bruce.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, I love the term. I just posted this on social. Iron sharpens iron. But I've had so many people that have supported me, that have encouraged me, that have inspired me. Many people that don't even know me. Right. You went to see him at an event, a John Maxwell or a Darren Hardy or a Mel Robbins or whoever, a Julie Birch.
I know, right?
But I was thinking it really starts with my mom and my dad. My mom divorced early. I remember she worked 3 jobs to put food on the table for 5 children. And then my dad comes in and he has 2 children, and they get married, and they've been married for almost 50 years now. And they showed me though the value of hard work and valuing people.
And it started from the source.
From the source. I mean, my mom, she still bowls today. She's almost 80 years old. She still bowls today. And she's listen, you think I do networking? She is the networker.
You have to learn it from somewhere.
My brothers and sisters, I have, they're all successful. They all do great work. My younger sister just got her PhD. And so I learned from them. But my older brother is the one that really helped me get started on my journey in Dallas. And then today we serve together in different boards. He's a past president also of Dallas HR.
Awesome.
Yeah, we both were served as presidents of NTRP, and so there's an. I mentioned earlier about the manager that I learned a lot from. His name is Heitor De Faria, and what's interesting about Heitor De Faria, he worked for me. He was an operations manager, and I learned so much from him. But he's from Brazil. He has a great story. Came over to the U.S. Didn't know how to speak English, and started watching TV shows and learning. And
Wow.
I just admire him so much. But there was a story I shared in the presentation last year about how I learned from him. I'll give you a quick story. We needed to do some training. We were having lots of quality issues when I first got over the organization, and I said, hey, let's have some training. He said, not a problem. I'll fix everything up. And I came into the warehouse the next day, and he had folding chairs all lined up in the warehouse. He had a clipboard, he had a pencil, he had a tape measure, ready for the guys to come in, do some training, but he also had a broom on every chair. I said, hey, Tor, this is fantastic. What's that broom for? He said, we got to set the expectations. He said, we need for them to know they need to have clean uniforms. They need to clean up after themselves when they leave the customer's home. They need to clean their trucks out. It's our job as leaders to set the expectations. And I just admired. He did things like that, and I was like, he is right. He set the expectations. Mm-hmm. And so he's fantastic. I've had leaders that have encouraged me and written me, encouraging notes. Dave Nelson and Mike Gonzalez, they've been great. Texas Sherm and Dallas HR. I mean,
you can't go wrong there. Yeah.
Like, there's so many people, but that have been just absolutely been incredible. But I would say my wife, she has been a supporter of mine from day one. There was a time when I took the job at the Armstrong Company. I took a pay cut, and she just believed in me the whole time. And so she taught me a lot of things, but the most important thing she taught me was, don't forget about what matters. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people, I learn from someone every day. Hosting the podcast, I learn from all the guests.
I love listening.
Your journey. I'm just so excited about your journey ahead, because I know what my journey has been like, and it's going to be fantastic.
I'm just so honored to get started. The trajectory of my life in the last 3 years is pretty incredible, but you influenced it.
Thank you.
Texas Sherm influenced it. PB Sherm,
yes.
Coming to HR Southwest. It's just incredible to see when you get connected, when you network in, even if you struggle with networking, and it's just going for it. But I don't know if it had to be probably a speaker, but going after the yes. And understanding that if you gotta know, it doesn't mean no as a finale. Mm-hmm. It probably means just not right now. You go back and you readapt it, you restructure it, and you represent it, and you'll get your yes at the right time, at that right moment. It's just, I just love how it goes with connection, because if it hadn't have been for Robert Segura meeting me on a plane to get involved in PB Sherm, to get involved in National Sherm, to get involved in Texas Sherm, I would have not been at that meeting yesterday, where I got to see, I was blown away by it.
I mean, I think it all comes all back to you gotta show up.
You gotta show up. You gotta be, what do you say, intentional. I think for me too is when I became intentional in my career, intentional with raising my children, intentional with what my dreams and vision were. That's when I saw transformation. That's when I saw it, because now when I look back, even just 6 months ago, I'm like, because I've been putting in the work, because I said yes to going back to school, because I said yes to bringing on speakers to come down to PB Sherm to speak. It
for
happened.
A sold out event.
For a sold out event.
Yep.
That at first people were like, this can't be done. And I'm like, watch. You build it, they will come.
Yeah. It's fantastic. And you got a great group. Yeah, PB Sherm.
I mean,
Megan.
We're coming alive. She's
Megan, phenomenal. Robert. I mean, the whole. I met the whole board, and when I met the board, I think I mentioned to you. Now I know why you're having success, because you have alignment. You have people with passion that are all moving in the same direction. But most importantly, you have intention. You have purpose. Everybody knows what they're there to do. They know why they're there.
We see them, and we
Yeah.
see what their talents
Yeah.
are, and we're recognizing them, and we're putting that into works. Because
Yeah.
volunteering takes time.
It does.
Time away from your family, time
Yep.
away from your career,
Yeah.
time away from even your own projects. And when you get involved, be intentional in that. If you, like you said, you couldn't do all of them.
Yeah.
You had to pick
Right.
which ones really spoke to you.
Yeah.
So I did the same thing. I'm only a part of a few things, and those that join, I see you, welcome, and the diversity and the inclusion in it. And I got to talk to all the other chapters yesterday.
Was that great? I love what you just said, though. I think one of the things I'm going to talk about, one of the things I talk about in the book, in my new book, is to start, though, you have to define what success looks like. And as you talked about that, I thought about that because you said, hey, what does a successful conference look like? So you knew ahead of time. So a lot of times it's not about the numbers. It might be about the experience.
It is about the experience.
Right?
It didn't matter to us if we had sold out or not.
Yeah.
It meant, were we providing the resources and the tools that our community and the industries out there in the oil and gas Permian Basin, if you build it, they will come. They're not going to come if you're not building the platform, bringing you down, bringing Randy Anderson and Julie Birch in an expo. We hadn't done that, you know, and breakout sessions. But I had an examples because I had traveled to Texas SHRMs and I have traveled to national SHRMs. So it was not reinventing the wheel, but it was being purposeful.
Yeah.
And it was an experience for myself too.
You were driving with purpose.
It was driving with purpose. This is why we connected, Bruce. We're going to shift into what advice that you hold key to give to emerging leaders, to students, because we have a good student platform here at HR Southwest.
Yes, we do.
And what would you share with them, especially with your books and stuff, with changing their lane or maybe driving with purpose, so they pursue their passions to get involved and to connect?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking that. My mom, I remember her telling me when I was early on, I don't know, I might have been 7th or 8th grade. She was telling me about the importance of choosing your friends wisely. And I really didn't know what that meant at that time. And fast forward to today, I always talk about your network is your net worth. And I think that for me, that's really where my career has taken off, is whenever I started really listening and valuing people, connecting with people, and then finding ways to help people. Because it's all about people. We talked about, it's all about HR earlier. It's all about people. And what I find is that many of us connect on LinkedIn or accept friendships, different things like that. But we really don't build relationships. I always talk about, if you were on LinkedIn, how many people do you really know who's in your LinkedIn group? And most people will say, I don't know half the people. I may have met them somewhere or they just sent me a friend request and we're just connected. But are you really developing a relationship? So when someone talks about how they're a connector or they do different things, my question is always, how do you stay connected? And so that would be, for me, my advice is, first of all, build a network, but most importantly, how can you stay connected? How can you continue being a resource? I was reading a story recently, and a pastor was sharing this about a successful marriage requires a PhD. And so I'm like, tell me more, right? And so the PhD, though, stood for, the P stood for passion. You have to know what the other person is passionate about. So you got to find that out. If you don't know, then you're not really connected. The H stood for heart. Like what moves them, And the third, the D stands for dreams. Like what are their dreams? So if you can connect with someone, let's say at a networking event or at the conference, then you can go and find, try to figure out what are they passionate about. oh, well, this person's passionate about hiking. If you see something, an article or a YouTube video or something, and you send it to them and say, I was thinking about you.
Yes.
Now all of a sudden that person's going to remember you.
I think after the conference, because we had connected through LinkedIn and everything, PB Sherm's conference.
Okay.
You texted me and you had some great questions, and it took me a minute. It was a very busy day, but I was like, he texted me. He wants feedback. Be intentional with it. So I sat back and I thought about it, and they were some hard questions, by the way. But when then I wrote it out and I sent it to you, I had apologized in advance that they were quite long.
Yeah.
But it was my story, and a bit of it with
it was great
with change and stuff, because you were connecting with me outside of the conference. That you saw something that you wanted for your purpose. But I was so busy, and I could have sent out like a lame response to him or whatever. But I'm like, no. When you give it more time, give it more time. But I felt more connected to you after that.
I love that. I appreciate you sharing that, because a lot of times we put so much pressure on ourselves to, oh man, I need to go find something to connect with them. No, you just need to be thinking about, like, remember like what their passion is, what their heart is, what their dreams are. And think about, like, okay, next time I come across something, I'm going to send that. Like, okay, if I see something around podcasting, I'm probably going to send that to Mel, because that's like her passion right now. Like, she's trying to build her platform. Or if I, meet someone else, and I had a Paula Harvey on my podcast recently, and her passion is passport stamps. So she likes to travel. And so if I see something around traveling, I'm probably going to send it to her. She's also loves peacocks, just like you do, Mel. And so find those things. Those are called connection points, and send those to them. It's not about, I think I read somewhere about you need to give 5 to 1 to ask. So give 5, like give. Okay, now you can ask. Hey, by the way, can you help me get connected to someone? Can you help me find a job? Can you help me? But do that. I can't remember where I heard that ratio, but 5 to 1.
That sounds.
Give 5 times.
That's good
and then
advice.
Ask. Yep.
Yeah. I appreciate that, Bruce. We're going to have a little fun here before we have to wrap up, because our time is cruising on by.
Good.
Because of Unplug with Mel, obviously it's in the title of Unplugging. In HR, or even in relocation, or being an author and a speaker, you travel a lot to all these events. You make yourself very accessible, and you're out and about.
I'm an open book.
You're an open book. How do you unplug from all of the busyness that you do, even with the purpose-driven life?
Yeah.
What gets you to reset, unplug, re-engage, rest?
Yeah.
For your family, for your career, for the next event. What do you do, Bruce?
I was playing golf years ago, early in my career. We were like, we were one of 5 different suppliers that were hosting at this event. And during this event, we got to play golf. And I was playing golf with the CHRO, Chief Human Resource Officer. And he was telling me about all of these golf courses he's played all around the world. And I stopped him for a second. I said, man, this is fantastic. I love this story, but I need to ask this question. How do you find time? Like, you're a busy guy. How do you find time to do that? And he said, well, I'll schedule it. And that was an epiphany at that time for me, because I was like, it just like hit me. And so from there on out, I've been really good about being intentional about what I do, where I go, blocking time, things like that. And so I'm like you or anyone else. At the end of the day, when I'm here at the conference, when I'm out and about, I want to meet people, I want to talk to people, I want to learn from people. But when I go home, I want to not.
You need to recharge.
I want to recharge. And so for me, I read. I read a lot. I like to read. I like to read business books. I have a blog called Move to Inspire, and so I like to write on my blog. And I exercise every morning, and that for me, that kind of starts my day. Kind of gives me that that mental reset. And and then I have my family time.
I love family time too.
Yeah. I think that more than anything is that when everything changed for me is when I stopped managing my days and I started leading my life. And
I'm writing that down, Bruce.
Well, good. Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, you got to be intentional about your everyday. Here's what's important to me. Here's what I'm going to do. And yes, you're going to have things. They're going to have curveballs. I mean, especially in HR, you're going to have things that come up. But after they do come up, get back on track and just keep on working the plan.
You kind of just segued into the best piece of advice right there. Anything else you'd like to add on how you would influence the people that are listening today or even watching us to influence their career or life in general? Best piece of advice you got?
No, I think that you have to, again, you just have to find what works for you. And be the best you can be. There's for others.
There's the Army quote right there.
That's right. Be the best you can be, and just serve, and just keep serving, and just keep going. I mean, you're gonna walk through valleys. You're gonna walk, and then you're gonna be on the peak, but the valley's ahead.
I know. I never.
Right? Yeah. What do they say? The top of the one mountain is the bottom of the next. And you just keep going. But when you're intentional and you know what's important to you and you know what matters, you just do it.
Well, I thank you for joining me today on Unplug with Mel. If you're listening today, we'll be on YouTube as well as Apple and Spotify. We hope this encourages you. If you'd like to tell your story to inspire infinite growth, reach out through LinkedIn. Bruce, how will they connect with you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. I think that's probably the best place. And if you reach out to me, I love it when you put a note on there.
Yeah,
I heard you on Unplug with Mel.
Yeah.
Maybe something we said that maybe encouraged you in some way.
Sparks
that's probably the best way. Yeah.
Sparks some hope.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of the day, I think.
Yeah. Thanks, Mel.
No problem.